All right, welcome back, Jeep folks. We are in episode 4 of our Jeep bolt-on performance bolt-on dyno series, and in today's video we're going to go ahead and put in our 4-hole injectors, and then if we have time we're going to go ahead and try out some throttle body spacers and see if they net us any power. We are racing a little bit of weather here today, and we're outside with no top, so if the rain starts coming down we're going to have to wrap it up early. But I'm gonna go ahead and get those 4-hole injectors installed, and then we'll get it on the dyno here, get it warmed up, and get ready for our first pull. All right, so these are the injectors we're gonna be using. These are the standard 4-hole injectors that everybody swaps in. They're out of a Ford product. That's the application. Went ahead, I had these cleaned. They replaced the filters and flowed them. And I had a set of 8. They picked the ones that were all the closest to each other, and that's what we've got here. I'm gonna go ahead and unplug all these connectors one at a time and get some of this stuff out of the way. And pretty straightforward. I pulled the fuel pump fuse and cranked it. Should have reduced the fuel pressure in here enough that I can go ahead, pull that quick connect off, remove the bolts, and pull the fuel rail and injectors. Probably gonna have to take some of this stuff off though. Let me get started. All right, so we went ahead and we got all the fuel injectors changed out. Everything should be back together and tight. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna prime up the fuel system, cycle the key on for about 5-10 seconds, turn it off for 5-10 seconds, then back on. I'll do that about 3 or 4 times, and then I'll check for leaks out here. And if everything looks good, I'm gonna go ahead and fire it up. Okay, so I just do a visual inspection. Usually run my finger down around the bottom of the injector, looking for any sort of moisture, any drips out of the connection here. We didn't use the fuel pressure test port. Some people will bleed the system out there. I would check that then, but it looks like we should be good. So I'm gonna go ahead and fire it up. It might start a little bit rough. There's air in the injectors and air in the fuel rail. Without a return style system, that air's got nowhere to go. So it has to get blasted through the injector. So it starts up a little bit rough and then it starts to smooth out as that air works out. It's already sounding a lot better. Getting pretty smooth. All right, so with that done, let's go ahead and get this thing backed on the dyno. Okay, so as you saw, the 4-hole injectors got installed, and I went ahead, we put it up on the rollers, and it's been running for about 27 minutes. We got about 3 minutes left on our warm-up, and then we're gonna go ahead and start run number 1. Once again today, we do have the HP Tuner scanner software pulled up with all of our channels live. And since we are adding mods every time, we have the Windstar back on. I did go ahead and put that filter in. So the filter's back in, the Windstar box is on, and the 4-hole injectors are in. So this next pull is gonna be 4-hole injectors with all of our previous mods. And we're gonna go ahead and see how much power it makes. All right, the timer's gone off. It's time to go ahead and start doing our first pull. Once again, we have it hooked up on the dyno here. Ambient temperature today is 92.5 degrees. Humidity is 38, and we're at 296 pressure today. Let's go ahead, get this thing up to speed, and we'll start run number 1. Let's go ahead and stop the log. And it looks like IAT is a little bit cooler today, 130, drops down to 113. It looks like we're getting about 20, ramping up to 27 degrees of spark. Long short terms are turning off during the pull, which is correct. Map sensor starting at 98, dropping down 92, 93. And let's go ahead and take a look at the dyno. All right, so here we have the numbers. We've got our Windstar best in blue. That was from last session, 133.3. First run of the day with the new injectors, 134.8. So a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit of power there. Max torque 169.0 on the Windstar. We dropped down to 168.2 on this run. And I think it's pretty interesting. It actually looks like out here, like 4,200 and above, it almost kind of looks like The new injectors are a little bit smoother. You don't have some of these big peaks and valleys, which we like to see in the tuning. Like, you know, it's not all about power, but it's about smooth, repeatable, reliable power. And it almost looks like it kind of smooths some of that out. Like we may be getting a little bit better burn with these injectors, possibly. Let's go ahead and take a look at our air fuel. I was really curious to see what these were gonna do with our air fuel. They're supposed to be roughly the same size. Oh, but look at that. It leaned out substantially. So dipping into the pole, 1303, we're up to 14.6. And then coming out across 14, I mean, it looks like we dropped over an entire point of air fuel ratio by switching to these injectors. 11.4 to 12.59. I mean, arguably, the red line is, you know, a lot of people like to kind of aim for anywhere from low 13s to high 12s. It is pretty good for power and reliability, wide open throttle on an NA engine. And you're going to get some people that are going to disagree with that. Some people run them closer to 13.5, some guys run them closer to 12 and a half, but in my experience, right around that 13.0, you know, is pretty good for an engine like this. Pretty inefficient, low compression. So I mean, we're pretty close to that. I mean, so just by tossing the injectors in, we leaned it out, and even leaning it out, and that may be part of where that smoothing is coming from. You know, all this extra fuel may be causing some slight misfires, which is what you're seeing here with the roughness, and leaning it out may actually be where that's from. May have nothing to do with the actual injector itself, the spray pattern, but more to do with the flow of the injector and the fact that it leans them out just a little bit. Interesting. Well, that's good info to have. Let's go ahead and we'll let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and do another pull on this and see if it backs it up. Hang tight. All right, our 5-minute timer has expired. We're gonna go ahead and start run number 2. All right, looking at our stats, we started a little bit higher on the IATs on this pole at 147, down to 118 at the top of the pole, and everything else looks about the same. Let's go see what the dyno has to say. All right, a little bit better on that one. When you compare it to run number 1 or the Windstar best, we got 137.3 and 171.5. And I don't really see, it kind of looks like the 137 is like maybe this little peak right here, which I don't know that that's super accurate, because realistically everything is, oh, actually, you know where it was? Something kind of happened up here at the top, and this does happen occasionally on the dyno. For whatever reason, the engine kind of laid over for a second, and I don't know if it's sometimes they just do that. I don't know why they do it, but multiple cars will do it. I don't really understand it completely, but it dropped power there for just a second and then put it back in, kind of like a little bit of a cut or something. And it looks like right at the top of that, right as that comes back in, that's where our little spikes were. So I'm not sure we can really count that as a full and clean run. I mean, I would say it's very similar to the previous run until it does that little cut. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna let it sit. I was gonna stop there if it was clean, but I'm gonna go ahead and we'll do one more pull just to verify our results and hopefully get rid of this. Hopefully that's not our head gasket gone, or, you know, we dropped a valve or something. It sounds like it's running pretty good still, so we should be good. But we'll set the timer for 5 minutes and we'll get back after it. All right, so that's interesting. At the top of that pole, we actually got a check engine light. So I'm gonna stop this, and I'm gonna use the HP scanner we're going to read the DTCs. This probably is going to tell us what happened at the top of that pole. Interesting. So this says P205 cylinder 5 injector circuit open current. It's current code, and then cylinder 1 misfire detected is still pending. So we still have a cylinder 1 misfire, and then now it's telling us that we have a cylinder 5 injector circuit. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the hood and wiggle that connector around, maybe unplug it, check it, and put it back together. We may have gotten some dirt or something in there, and then I'm gonna go ahead and clear these codes out, and we'll go ahead and set up for our third pole. All right, I went ahead and I opened the hood, wiggled that connector around, unplugged it, plugged it back in. It all looks pretty good. Check the wires, they all look good. But I did go ahead and clear the code, so we'll see if that comes back. But in the meantime, it seems like it's running pretty good. So let's go ahead and start pole number 3, I guess. Number 2.1, I guess we'll call it. That one was a lot cleaner. IATs are a little warmer, in the low 150s down to 122. Everything else looks pretty good. Let's go take a look at the dyno and see what it says. All right, so back over here at the dyno. Okay, so we did make 137 again. 137.5. I mean, that's up a couple from our 134.8. Air fuel was just a touch leaner on that one than the previous run. Just a tad. But yeah, we made power. Kind of looks a little rough again. Let's go ahead and get rid of the first run of the day. So we're gonna go ahead and get rid of 1. So now we're just comparing the Windstar best versus this one with our injectors. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have guessed that, but I have a theory as to why. But 130 to 135, 135.7 to 130, that's 5. That's a gain of 5. 125 to 130, that's a gain of 5. 121 to 130, that's you know, that's, well, 121.7, so that's 8 and some change. But it made a little less down here for some reason. I'm guessing probably because it's a little bit on the lean side. And that was my theory that I was going to share, is I think a big portion of this picking up power business is due to us leaning out the air fuel mixture. I mean, we went from, you know, 11.9 there to 13.3, and you know what? It's very much, you know, it's like a finger width the whole way across. I mean, it's very much the same amount. So if I had to guess, these injectors, these 4-hole injectors, they flow just a little bit less. And even though they're advertised as being, you know, whatever 19 pound-hour, it's probably at a different pressure. A lot of these injectors are flowed at different pressure. The Jeep ones may be at, you know, 45. These may be at 60. That's really common. So it may be something like that. There's also some stuff with battery offset and latency and some things like that that may be different, but that's interesting. So is it the injector then that actually makes power? Well, I guess indirectly it's always the injector, even though it's because it's flowing less. That's I would bet though, if we lowered this down, you know, to where it was previously in the high 13s, or actually low 13s, and then you know, we kept this out here about where it's at, I'm wondering if we could, you know, bring these numbers back up to where they were, but then continue this a little bit further out with our power. But I mean, all things being said, bolting it on without anything else, it did pick up 5 on the top, albeit it looks like it kind of starts doing that about 4,000 RPM. So your big power, 5 horsepower, is going to be from, you know, we'll call it 4,500 on, is kind of where it's fair to say that. And then, but it did lose some on the low end, so you're trading some of that high-end power for some low end. The key is when we go in and we do the HP tuner, I think we can straighten this out. And honestly, I think the factory injectors probably could have done the same thing with those. But just for a bolt-on, it's interesting. A little bit lower power, you know, on the low side, a little bit more power on the top end. Interesting stuff. Well, let's go ahead and I'm gonna go and get the throttle body spacer, and we're gonna go ahead and put on the 1-inch spacer and do our first pull with that 1-inch spacer. Okay, this is the 1-inch spacer that I have. This actually came off of a vehicle we put a turbo kit on. I have no idea whose this is, who makes this. It says Top 4.0. There is a part number on it. Maybe somebody could look it up. 310-510. All right, we've been running here for a few minutes. We've got our throttle body spacer on. We'll go ahead and get up to speed for run number 4. Stop our log. 140 down to 122. You know, that air temp really likes to be down in the, you know, kind of low 120s at the top every run, which is good. It's a lot better than we were getting before. Everything looks pretty good. Let's go take a look at the dyno. And I can already sense the disappointment because it didn't feel great. Yeah, it wasn't. It was pretty lame. Real lame. So looking at our power here, 137.8. Last pull was 137.5. 170 versus 168. I don't know if you can really call that a gain. I mean, we did 169, the best of our Windstar, so I don't feel like the torque's really there. It didn't pick anything up down low. It didn't pick anything up high. It didn't do anything. It was overall kind of meh. I would say, in my humble opinion, throttle body spacer, not worth it. It really doesn't seem like there was anything to gain here at all. Yeah, nothing worthwhile. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna call that no power. Maybe we should do one more, I guess. I suppose we probably should. Let it cool down, or let it, you know, sit for 5 minutes. We'll do one more with the throttle body spacer. We'll give it the best chance possible, and after that we'll do our 0 to 60, and we'll start wrapping this guy up. All right, we're about ready for run number 5. Just a real quick point here. I had 3D printed this. This is a 4-inch tall throttle body spacer. I was gonna put that on. Some folks may be a little disappointed, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to get it to work. I have some all thread I was gonna use to put it on there. Like, I had that part figured out, but I don't have a good way to make the linkage work. Because it's so tall, the throttle linkage, it doesn't operate in its normal range, so it doesn't open all the way. So we're gonna go ahead and say meh with that guy. We're gonna continue with this. We're gonna do our 0 to 60 and we're gonna get out of here. So let's go ahead. We're set up, we're ready to roll. Let's go ahead and do run number 5. More of the same. Looks like our IETs are up just a little bit and our timing's down. So I won't be surprised if this runs down just a little bit. Let's go take a look. All right, just as I thought, we did 134.8 this time instead of 137. So we're down just a little bit. IETs are up a little bit. You know, it's kind of the downside of doing these hot laps. Even waiting a few minutes in between, the whole thing just starts to get hotter and hotter and hotter, and I think that's what we're seeing here. It's just warm. It's hot out here too. So your dyno says 94.3 right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna get all this cleared out and we're gonna get set up for our 0 to 60. Hang tight. All right, it's 0 to 60 time again. We're gonna go ahead and start the log, and we're gonna start our 0 to 60 in 3, 2, 1. All right, I think we had a bit of an unintended consequence here of that throttle body spacer, and the fact that we have a the old 3-speed automatic with the throttle valve, and I think by adding that spacer we affected our position of that throttle valve, and that's evident in the fact here that we actually got all 3 gears, which of course slowed us down. We didn't get to rev out near as far. I'm thinking the best solution probably for that is to go ahead and take the throttle body spacer back off and just do the 4-hole injector 0 to 60, and I'll go ahead and set up that throttle valve. I'll make sure that it's adjusted correctly so that we can get an accurate 0 to 60. So let me do that stuff, and then we'll get back here to do another 0 to 60. Okay, so we got the throttle body spacer removed, and we're gonna go ahead then and do run number 5.2 or 3 or AB, whatever we're on. 0 to 60, second attempt. Got the throttle valve set again, and throttle body spacer's out, but the 4-hole injectors are still in. And we'll go ahead and start that test here in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, much better. Actually got some RPM out of it. All right, let's look at the numbers here. So it looks like this one we started kind of in between, so it's getting a little convoluted here, but in green we have our stock 0 to 60, in blue is the Windstar 0 to 60, and then in red, so if you look at our starting points, it's like green, red, blue. So we determined last time that that was 1.5 seconds and 1.6, so according to this it's only about a 10th, and so it's very actually little difference. So I think what we'll do is we'll just say that it's the same. So we'll go up here to 60 miles an hour, which is going to be kind of hard to find, and we're looking for our red 60. So right there at 7.8 seconds, which I think last time we said 7.7, but we subtracted, or we added 2. I don't know, something like this. Like I said, it's getting a little confusing. One thing that we can kind of work out here is our green, which is our stock 0 to 60, the lines on the bottom here. Our blue was our somewhat optimistic Windstar, and then our red. So I think we can see some trends, like we are gaining slightly. We're at 7.8, and the green one didn't hit 60 until 8.0. So like 2 to 3 tenths, I would say, between the Windstar and the Injectors. So like I said, it's a little bit hard to, you know, to work out because there's so much going on. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up our Windstar stab test, and we'll go ahead and do that on here, and we'll see how that goes, and then we'll wrap this guy up. All right, so once again, we're here to do the stab test. We're rolling out about 8 miles an hour. We've sat for about 5 minutes, and we're gonna go ahead and just floor it in first gear and see what some of this lower RPM power looks like. Okay, let's go take a look at the dyno. All right, so I'm gonna change this to speed here. Pull this down. So it almost kind of looks like, you know, what we talked about earlier with the air fuel being slightly leaner, especially on tip in and lower throttle. And I'm wondering if, yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely see it's leaner here. And I think that's why we're seeing the power being a little bit lower. You know, 128 to 136, 62 to 66. So, you know, we're running a little bit less power down low, and then it all seems to kind of cross over. Let me change this to engine speed. So go second gear, Oh, wow, that's a mess. Okay. There we go. I was gonna say, so it almost kind of looks like here, right around 3,900 is where we start to see the lines will start to cross back over. And, you know, probably more even towards 4,200 or so. If this continued out, I would think we would see these start to come apart again like we did in the high power tests, or the high RPM tests. But down low, I think it's pretty clear that just doing the injectors without a tune, it looks like, according to this, it looks like you lose a little bit of down low power with just doing the injectors, and it's running lean, which is not necessarily always good. So I don't know, if it was mine, I would probably recommend doing, if you're gonna do the injectors, but do them along with a tune, and go ahead and get some of this corrected so that you can get the air fuel all dialed in. And then I think you would probably have, you know, something to talk about. But I don't know that just doing the injectors on their own really really gained us anything if we would have been able to keep the air fuel at about the same rate. Let's go ahead and we're gonna get set up on our little vibration test thing, and then we'll do the we'll get to the close of this video, and I'll give you the updates and what's coming in the next video. Hang tight. All right, we're set up here on our idle vibration test, and looking at the chart, it looks very similar to what we saw with the Windstar. We're getting between 0 and 0.1. You know, it actually, I'm not seeing any of the little telltale markers coming up to the top. So I'm not sure if that means that it's not Looks like it is, yeah, there's 0.1. So I would say, you know, relatively similar to the Windstar. I don't know that I could call necessarily one better than the other. It looks very similar to the idle quality test that we did with the Windstar. So I'm gonna call that, you know, sort of an undetermined. And we'll move on and get this guy wrapped up. All right, well, we made it all the way through without getting rained on and the storms rolling us over. In conclusion, I think I would have to say the 4-hole injectors were a little bit of a bust, in my opinion. I think that the gains we saw were due to a leaner air-fuel mixture. I think overall those injectors probably flow just a little bit less than the stock injectors. We saw that air-fuel lean out at least a whole point, if not about a point and a half in some spots. And that caused you know, the power to go up a little bit on the top end. We got about 5 horsepower on the top end, and we lost a few horsepower on the bottom end, and I think that's because it was a little bit lean. I would say, once again, you know, just to reiterate my point, if I was going to do these injectors, I would do them in combination with the tune. There may be something to be had, but I feel like, you know, wide open throttle being in the 14s down low, I don't really care for that. Up high, I like that a lot better than low 11s. There's, you know, there's some benefit there, but I don't think I would just drop these guys in without a tune. I think it really needs a proper good tune to get the air fuel all straightened out. And it just so happens that in the next episode, that's what we're gonna be doing. So we're gonna go ahead and leave these injectors in here. We're gonna leave the throttle body spacer out. I think, you know, it's pretty conclusive that did nothing. It did nothing in the way of power or torque. It looks pretty under the hood for some people. That's great, but I don't think it's worth the money to go down that road for you know what amounted to no power and no torque. In the next video, like I said, we're going to be going ahead. I've got a HP Tuners dongle. We've got the tune file already pulled out of here. I'm going to go ahead and start modifying that based on the data that we've got in here. I can go ahead and I can already start making changes. So we'll hit the ground running with the next dyno session, and then every previous session after this, we're gonna do some other stuff with some bolt-ons. We've got some different rockers. We've got a whole bunch of other internal engine parts as well. But all the dyno sessions we're gonna do after this are gonna be optimized with the HP Tuners tune, meaning we're gonna do the mod, and then we're gonna do a couple pulls with the HP Tuners, and we're gonna get the air fuel and the timing and everything to where it's happy for each mod. And I think with the combination of that, we should start seeing a little bit more power in the future here. My goal for all of this was to hit 200. That might have been a little bit optimistic. I think we saw a high today of 137. We're getting to, almost getting to what the later model, like the 2000 to 2006 with 5-speed, they typically are dynoing like 145, 150 stock. We're almost getting there. We're really close, but you know, we're halfway through this dyno series. We're up a little over a quarter way through the dyno series, and we haven't seen huge gains yet. So let's hope that the next ones, along with the tune, we'll start seeing a little bit more power. But yeah, until then, like, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, thanks for watching.